So this is our second video on rebuilding the SS Carl D. Bradley in Lego. If you haven't seen our first video yet, I recommend you watch it. It's essentially just going over the start of the design process and choosing the canvas on which we'll be building this ship. So in this video, we're going to go into actually designing the ship using Lego. So the first step to this process is deciding where we're gonna start designing the ship. We either have to start on the bow, the middle section of the hull, or the stern. So typically what I like to do, regardless of what I'm designing, is choose a very defining characteristic, whether it's of a ship, of a building, an aircraft, whatever. What's the most important part of that object or thing that makes it look like it does? So with the Carl D. Bradley, I'm specifically going to be focusing on the hatches. The reason I'm doing this is because it has a select number of hatches. The Bradley, I believe, has 17 hatches. If we're building a model of the Bradley, we want it to have 17 hatches. We don't want it to have 18. So really focusing first on the hull section and the spacing between the hatches and the size of the hatches, the overall look. I think that is probably the most important thing for this kit, so that's where we're gonna start. So the first thing that I like to do when designing a hull of a ship in Lego is to look at and create a midship section. Midship section is essentially a slice through the middle of the ship showing the contour of the hull and the insides of the ship. So analyzing the midship section a little bit, we can see that the top here, it's not straight and flat. It's got a little bit of a bow to it. And then you can see on the sides, they slightly taper in as they go up. And then of course we have this wide open cargo section. So I'm gonna create a few midship sections and see what we can do. So these are the two samples I came up with after an hour or so of designing. And for the sample on the left, I was able to incorporate a little bit of railing that would have been on either side of the hull. But because of that, the sides of the hull are flat. There's no taper to them. The bottom of the hull on this one is flat, and then we have the protrusion of the hatch just like on the actual plan. And then for the sample on the right, we've got a little bit more of a focus on the taper of the side. So starting at the base of the hull as we go up, it gets more narrow just like the real ship. We have the hatch just like the other sample, and then we have our flat hull. Problem was, I just was not satisfied with how these midship sections were looking. I kept looking at the actual plan and seeing the openness of the cargo hold, and I really wanted to kind of capture that cargo space within the ship. And so I started doing designs on the computer, one after another after another. I got frustrated because I was not able to figure it out, so I resorted to grabbing the Lego bin. So using these blueprints and these parts, I spent an entire day designing. And after an entire day of designing, this little section right here is what I came up with. This little section matches the beam of the ship perfectly. It has some beveled edges going from the bottom of the hull to the sides of the hull, just like the real ship. And it has that inner cargo space kind of emptiness that I was looking to achieve. But my favorite thing is that the hatches have a slight bend in them, just like the real ship. The deck is not straight and the hatches are a little bit bowed. And I was able to capture that in this little build. Another interesting thing is that the hatches are removable. The only problem with this section is that the space between the hatches was only 2 plates wide. That was a problem because it would make the whole ship way too short. The hatches would be too scrunched together and they would not match up to the plans that we had decided on in our first video. So I spent another entire day designing this whole section and trying to fix the problem of the space between the hatches. So after 2 full days of designing just the hull for this model, I was finally able to come up with a solution. So this is the original section that we created. It has 2 plates wide. This one has one whole tile facing up. So it's another 1.8 millimeters between each hatch, creating the right amount of space that we need to form 17 hatches and be on scale for this model. Really happy with this section. It took quite a lot of time to figure it out. A lot longer than I wanted to spend, but I'm happy with the end result. That's it for this video, and in our next video, we'll be going into the design for either the bow or the stern section.